My Gavanan Melonin, and well met indeed. I'm Adrian, and welcome to a developer diary. Number 35, I think, possibly 36. You'll know because the title will tell you. But this has been a long time coming because Divide and Conquer has undergone a lot of change over the past, year, I suppose. But only a few months the major changes have done. So, for those of you that don't watch the channel at all other than the Developer Diaries, allow me to just first state that I no longer work on Divide and Conquer. I have only now retained access to the list of changes that they make to the game so that I can provide these Developer Diaries on their behalf. I am no longer the head of the mod, and I no longer do any modding for the mod at all. Only providing these videos. Lord of Links now runs the team, as it were, and a few members were brought on at the time that myself and Hummingbird both left the mod. So we are no longer involved, Hummingbird or I. Links now leads the mod, and a number of people were brought on to bridge the gap and continue with the work. And it's taken some time for them to kind of get in the groove of the way that Divide and Conquer worked, but things are now starting to pick up, which is brilliant. So today's Developer Diary is going to cover only a few sort of really minor things, if I'm honest. Nothing really groundbreaking apart from two things. Number one, we'll talk a little bit about the Dunadine of Arnold and their change, i.e. the reunited kingdom. And the other was that I was going to talk about Dunland, but I think actually it's better to save Dunland until it's done. So I'm not going to mention Dunland at all. So work has gone on to Dunland's changes, and work to overhaul Dunland has taken place, but I am not going to talk about that in today's video. I will wait until Dunland is complete. I'll get a full understanding of how their script works, and then I can provide that to you in a future developer diary. So for today, if you are hoping to hear about Dunland, I apologise, you won't hear anything about them really at all, apart from some minor bits. So let's start, as we always do, with the campaign map changes. Now, first of all, the forces of Enedwythe have mercifully, and perhaps better for the player as well, they've been toned down. And by that I mean you now train your troops when playing as Enedwythe much slower than you previously did. So that when you get to play Enedwythe, when version 5 releases, it won't be an absolute walk in the park like it was for me when I portrayed them on the channel. Their units came far too readily and far too available, and that has been addressed, so that's very good. In addition, the area of recruitment retraining building, something called the Way Station, which I've talked about at length before, which is only available in castles, and it allows you to retrain any AOR unit anywhere in the world. Now, there are some caveats to that. Not every single AOR unit is retrainable within this building. Those that are trainable in a lot of places, or recruitable in a lot of places, don't fall into the building. So, for example, units that are available in forests only, they probably won't be in the building because there's plenty of forest regions, so you don't actually feel restricted with them. But units that come from only 1 or 5 regions, for example, they will be in this building. And it has been added back into the game with the problem nation of Gundabad having been removed. I don't know if the team will try and look at that further. I'm no longer privy to the discussions of the team. I don't know if it is planned in the future to then try and get Gundabad's AORs in there as well. But at the moment, the AOR for Gundabad was causing it to crash frequently, so that had to be cut. But for all the other factions, the building has returned. So in castles, you'll be able to retrain AOR buildings. In addition, a fairly big thing implemented by Finn, one of the new members of the mod, is that the campaign script has now been made hot seat compatible forevermore. So Divide and Conquer will now be hot seat compatible, or hot seat will work right out of the gate. You no longer will need to rely on someone else to release a mod to update and amend it. You can just play with hot seat, which is pretty good. And also Calistonian, Finn has implemented a fix by Calistonian which stops major settlements losing their visual when the fog of war returns. So at the moment, obviously, they're not showing because I haven't actually visited them, so they always show as nothing. But a common bug many of you will know of is that when you visit a custom settlement, like Isengard, for example, and then the fog of war descends back upon it because maybe your scout moves elsewhere or you no longer have sight, then the model will revert back to its kind of file model. So Isengard is a citadel, and it's a standard citadel, and so it's a common bug. Many of you will know it. So when the Fog of War descends, Isengard no longer looks like the Tower and Ring of Orthanc, and instead it becomes a generic citadel, which was always a bit jarring. It's a very minor bug, because as soon as you get sight range on it again, it looks how it should. But that bug, nevertheless, has been fixed by Calistonian and implemented by Finn. Something that's gone on behind the scenes, which won't have much impact on your gameplay, but it will set us up in the future, or set Dak up in the future, and that is that the Dunlendings, the Men of Enedwaith, and the folk of the Anduin Vale have all been swapped over to a Northman culture. Now, that's only in the file, so in-game it won't actually mean anything at all, and I stress that. So the Anduin, who I believe at the moment are Northmen, will stay as Northmen, and the Dunlendings and the Men of Enedwaith will remain as Middlemen. But in the files, they are now Northmen, and that has been done primarily, that has been done exclusively, so that the Dunadine of Arnold now have their own culture entirely, which allows us to mix and match the different UI for the buildings. It allows us to have more freedom with the portraits that they use, and it sets them up in a much better position to then deal with the reunited kingdom. So the benefits of that change have not yet been felt in the mod. They've not been undertaken, but primarily, for example, this UI that you can see at the bottom of the screen that you're all looking at the moment is obviously the Wildmen/Northmen UI, which doesn't really fit with the Dunadine. But by giving them their own file culture, we can now create a UI down here that is entirely bespoke for the Dunadine. So I don't know whether or not the team are going to go for a sort of half and half, with half of it being the reunited kingdom and showing the glory of the future, and half of it being the rangers for whom they currently represent. That's entirely for the team, but the options are now there. So I should imagine by the time version 5 releases, you will probably have a new UI down here, because the possibility for that has been opened. Okay, some minor changes to units as well. The range of artillery units has now been listed in their unit card, much as it is for the units for any archer. So down here it tells you the range and the number of missiles. That has been implemented for all artillery, so you'll know that from now on. The Trebuchet is finally being given to the Aradanaim and the Dunadine, something that I used to bang on about non-stop when I was playing as the Ardanaim and when I've played as the Dunadine in the past, and I just never bothered to do, because for one reason or another. We're not here to discuss my flaws, that's been discussed at length, but the Trebuchet is finally available for the Ardanaim and the Dunadine, so you can now get out there and really start raining hellfire down on your enemies from, 300 meter range? I don't know the meme that all the youths spout out about the rock hurling 300 meters or whatever it is. I'm too out of touch. Another river crossing has been added between Beirig and Dunyard, which is this one just here that has a fort sitting outside of it. So you can now get between the two without having to go all the way around here. Beirig, remember, being made some time ago the capital of Dunland, because that is actually Dunland, hence why it's now called Dunland proper. Look at any map and it'll tell you that this area here is Dunland. So this is their capital. And now there's an additional passage between Dunyard and Beirig, which gives them more opportunity to move troops to the front line, which will have more of an importance because the relationship between Isengard and Dunland has been changed dramatically, and we will cover that, as I say, in an almost a Dunland-focused developer diary, which we'll do next time. The coastlines have finally been improved, something that I was never able to really get them to play as ball as much as I'd hoped. But a gentleman called Uniform Kilo has helped out the mod by improving the smoothness of the coastline. So as you can see now, there's no sort of odd clipping effects that there were before. I never really understood how or why those clipping issues arose. I read 3 different guides on designing coastlands for Medieval when I was doing most of the mapping. Well, all of the mapping really. And yet the fix that they said that would solve that sort of odd clipping issue never seemed to work for me. So I don't know what I was doing wrong, but obviously Uniform Kilo did know how to do it, and he has fixed it. So a minor little issue, but there's no longer any odd clipping around the coastlines of Middle-earth, which is pretty useful. This affects the Harnan specifically, the Kelduin and the lake up in Ravanion, or the Sea of Rune. That's interesting, isn't it? Unless it's this little lake here, probably. Lake up in Gundabad near Burzakul, and also the lake down in Harad, which is, of course, the small one here. So those have all just been amended. The Harnan Delta Islands have been replaced with just these 2 islands as well. So where before there were quite a few, there are now just 2, and perhaps that ties into the fix, I don't really know. But also Calistonian has also fixed all broken sea crossings that would previously make the AI stall. So again, further work has gone into the mod to ensure that end turns do not crash. In all shapes and forms, and I can honestly say I think version 5 is going to be quite possibly the most stable Divide and Conquer build ever. All of Finn's fixes have been implemented. Calistonian has been working with bug fixes as well, and Lynx has done a number of fixes as well also, meaning that a lot of minor little niggles that all add up to mean that it might crash every 50 turns or so. Many of those have been addressed. Now, I can't absolutely tell you that the game is going to be crash-free. It's a really old game. But a lot of work has gone on to remove and reduce a lot of the problems that were causing crashes in the past. So absolutely excellent work by the team. The final generic change before we talk about some factions specifically is that Calistonian has also finally gone into the audio events and removed references to Allah and Christendom, something that you may have heard pop up a few times before. There were some very rare voice lines that referenced medieval aspects and concepts, and they've finally been removed. So excellent work, Calistonian, there as well. Right, so then we come to the Dunadine of Arnold. Now, the first point is, if you are unsure, they are now called the Dunadine of Arnold. Everyone is so used to calling them the Northern Dunadine that we absolutely still do. I often call them the Northern Dunadine, and reading through the developers' changelog, I can see that they still refer to them as the Northern Dunadine. But they're now called the Dunadine of Arnold. The plan was to just call them Dunadine, but I think Dunadine of Arnold possibly works a bit better. Again, it's for the team to decide. I'm just giving my opinion. Because of the change that I'm about to discuss. So the foundation and the grounding for the reunited kingdom has been done. Now, starting this off is a few little changes to the region. So a couple of breeze forts, notably those on the eastern side, have been moved into the northern Dunadine. There you go, I've just done it. Into the Dunadine territory. So you'll note there's one just north of Amun-Sul, and then there's one in the far northern tip of the Weather Hills as well. So Bree has lost those two forts, but it's still got the two over there on the left and the one just south of Bree. Matraith is now a starting Dunadine town, which will help all of you out who struggle with the Dunadine a little more, because you get Matraith as standard, and Halbarad of the North has moved into there with his two Dunadine rangers. He no longer starts in the wilderness to the north of Matraith. Hervagil has been moved, perhaps controversially, to the east of Dead Man's Dyke, and he now sits in that fort with a couple of Dunadine Wardens and a couple of Dunadine Rangers, meaning that if you were hoping to get a Numinas straight off, you probably still could, but you might completely nerf yourself in doing so. It's definitely set up so that you take Dead Man's Dyke as soon as possible and make that your anvil upon which you will break the forces of Angmar. So Hervagil's in the fort up there. So for the reunited kingdom then, it goes thusly. The Dunadine will annex Gondor and Dol Amroth. So both of those nations will join the Dunadine. This script is only for the Dunadine. I stress that, and the team have continued with that plan. Gondor do not get an opportunity to reform the reunited kingdom. So it's Dunadine only. But it annexes Gondor and Dol Amroth. The faction logo and banners will change to the reunited kingdom. All your general strat models will upgrade and will then look like reunited kingdom generals, so you'll get a constant visual change on the campaign. And if you're wondering what I mean by the strat models, if we take a little look at Arafor over here, you can see that he currently looks like a Dunadine general. Let's get him out of the trees. And when you form the Reunited Kingdom, he will upgrade to look like a Reunited Kingdom general, as they all will. Aragorn also upgrades to get his King or Elisar look. So instead of looking like the Wandering Ranger, he'll upgrade and look like your King, because he is the King. Because you need to keep Aragorn alive, or the Reunited Kingdom. I don't know if they're going to allow it so his heirs can complete it, but that hasn't been discussed. But you'll certainly need Aragorn or his heirs. And at the moment, it seems like you'll need just Aragorn. So do not kill him, because you would not be able to do it. The custom bodyguard generals will be respawned. So what that means is something that I spoke about when I talked about the joining of Lothlorien and the Woodland Realm, is I mentioned that in uniting the two, any generals from the nation that are joining you that were custom bodyguards, you would lose those custom bodyguards, but you can get around that by creating a script, which I didn't mention and loads of people moaned at me for non-stop, which is wonderful and was a delightful period of my life. But that, of course, can be done with a script. So in essence, when the Dunadine take over Gondor and Dol Amroth, what will happen behind the scenes is that every general for these nations that is already alive and has a custom bodyguard, like Adrihil, like Imrahil, like Faramir and Boromir. Although I don't think Imrahil has a custom bodyguard, actually, does he? But anyway, those that have custom bodyguards and are alive will be killed off and then respawned in your nation with their custom bodyguard. That's how you do it. So you will keep your custom bodyguards for Gondor and Dol Amroth, provided those people are alive. The strat models as well will be kept for people like Faramir and Boromir, so they will still look like Faramir and Boromir. They won't change to generic Reunited Kingdom generals. So in essence, your key figures will stay your key figures, is the simple way of saying that. Some Amrothian generals as well will get a unique Amrothian strat model, which is pretty nice. And one of the key things is that when you annex Gondor and Dol Amroth, when you become the Reunited Kingdom, you take on the burdens of those nations, and that cannot be seen in any greater way than the fact that you will automatically be made to go to war with anyone with whom Gondor is at war with. So it doesn't form a neutrality with all of Gondor's enemies. You take on all of Gondor's enemies, keeping the difficulty there, which is good. Also, Eastern Osgiliath, provided Gondor own it, that's the tricky part, but provided Gondor own it, Eastern Osgiliath will automatically upgrade to its rebuilt form when you form the Reunited Kingdom, because the Dunadine do not have the ability to rebuild Eastern Osgiliath because of engine limitations, which many of you will be familiar with. The Dunadine can currently upgrade, I believe it's Deadman's Dyke, Anuminas, and Tharbad is the plan for the Dunadine, which means they cannot upgrade either Western or Eastern Osgiliath. So those will be upgraded automatically when the Reunited Kingdom is formed, so that you as the Dunadine do not lose out on those upgraded looks. But the caveat is that Gondor must own them in order for them to upgrade. That is a challenge, and so something that you might want to do, and just make a note of now if you plan on playing the Reunited Kingdom, is if you'd like the Osgiliaths to be upgraded, then just before you form the Reunited Kingdom, send an army down, capture the Osgiliaths, and immediately gift them back to Gondor, then defend them, and then at the point that you then become the Reunited Kingdom, they'll be upgraded and you'll get the nice new battle maps, which is good. So that's the Reunited Kingdom, but something many of you may not know is that they also plan on doing a sort of halfway house of reforming Arnor. So if you don't wish to reform the RK, you can reform just Arnor, and in that case, the Dunadine only annex Bree. Your faction icon and your banners will change to an Arnorian symbol, and your generals will upgrade to an Arnorian strat model rather than a Reunited Kingdom one. And it keeps your focus very much up here in Eriador, and you don't have to take on the burdens of Gondor. Because of course, by the time you form the RK, Gondor might be well up against it and already pretty much defeated. And so it might be more challenging than you'd hoped. So there's an option if you wish to ignore Gondor, allow them to die in essence, and just reform Arnor and live in glory up here away from Mordor. And worry about Mordor when they come. So that's the Reunited Kingdom and the work that's gone on to them at the moment. Very much just setting the groundwork. There's still an awful lot to do, and that I can hopefully talk to you about in future in another developer diary. So there's a few minor little bits and bobs before we move over to the battle map. The next up, we'll just focus on the AA. There's been a couple of quality of life changes for the Ardanaim, chiefly that the warning that the Ardanaim are about to attack Mithlond, that warning message now only pops up if the player is playing as the High Elves. So no longer will you be playing as Dorwinion to learn that the Ardanaim are about to attack Mithlond, because you don't care, and why would your scouts tell you that anyway? Additionally, the Ardanaim invasion of this region now does not take place if you are playing as the Ardanaim, which was a bug or an oversight on my part when I set up the script, and that's been fixed by Lynx, so my eternal gratitude to you, Lynx, as ever again, for fixing that. So you won't now be gifted against your will Harlond Forlond and Mithlond when you're playing as the Ardanaim, because you are likely to be nowhere near there, so that's good. Another change to the Ardanaim are the Corsairs. So the original Corsair units, the Azrazair as they're currently called, Azrazair Raiders, Archers, and I think that's it. Yes, it's just those two. The Raiders and the Archers are going to be renamed back to Corsairs. They will go back to using Battle for Middle-earth voice lines. They'll have a redone description. And they will then now also become universal mercenaries. With the backing for that being that in essence they're pirates, and pirates go wherever the gold is. So much like privateers did in our own time, in our own history, if a nation comes to them and says, hey, could you go and attack Enedwaith for us? Here's all the money you'll need to do that. Then they're going to do it because the money's there. So you can now train the Corsairs, the Raiders and the Archers in the western coastal regions, which is self-explanatory. You may have noticed when I was playing as Khazad-dûm that I was able to train them here in the Lower Gladden, and that was because this region in the file structure, as I've now seen from the changelog, this region was actually listed as a Haradrim region and not, as it should be, a Lower Anduin Vale region. So that's why you could accidentally train them there. So that is not going to be a feature for version 5. It's already been fixed. So they are available on the coasts and they're mercenaries for all. Right, that concludes pretty much all of the campaign changes, apart from there are some new battle map strategy models, or city strategy models to show you. So I shall just disappear for a brief moment. For me, it's probably going to be about 20 minutes, but for you, it'll be a couple of seconds, and I'll just show you off the new Northmen settlement models. So that's villages, towns, large city, keep, castle, and stronghold for the Northmen, which is Dale, Rohan, Dorwinion, and I believe that's it, because I think the Anduin use the Wildmen ones, but it may be the Anduin. No, they do use the Wildmen ones. So bear with me a moment and I'll just show you the new Northmen strategy models, and then we will jump over to the battle map and have a look at some of the changes that have taken place there. Welcome back. So here is the Northmen town. Not too different from the older style, but now again far more bespoke. And this again, let me remind you, is Rohan, Dale, and Dorwinion. This is what their towns will look like. So this is the starting town. A simple wooden wall with a nice little stone gatehouse and a very medieval style feel to it, because of course these are the nations most closely linked to medieval style buildings and districts. So that's the town, and then we move over to a large town. So the wall's been improved, it's got a stone base, the buildings inside are a little bit better planned, less higgledy-piggledy, and there are some buildings outside. I always love the buildings outside visual. I think it really separates the models, because in Medieval 2, in the base game, I don't think there's a single strategy model where there are buildings outside the walls. And so when you get up to the large city and the huge city tiers, I always thought the medieval settlements looked really stupid. Whereas that one feels a lot more like it actually blends into the countryside better. So I like that a great deal. So that is the Northmen large town. And then we jump onto the city where the walls now take a stone effect. Moving the camera around is such a pain in the neck. There's no slow movement. It's all or nothing. Even with the keyboard's even worse. But anyway, there you are. There is a city. The wall's now completely stone, which is reflected on the battle map. The town inside growing in size once again. The buildings taking on more grander proportions. And again, buildings outside the wall, which I like. So it's got a bit of a unique design in terms of its actual shape. It's not just here's a circle or here's a square. It's an odd sort of shape, and I like that a lot. But a very nice looking settlement. And then finally, if we move over to Fuerost, we come to the largest possible size, which looks absolutely awesome. It's got a wooden wall protecting those that live outside the gatehouse, a double-layered gatehouse, which is very cool, and the keep structure over in the far left over there, which I like a lot. The towers as well now all have it's very reminiscent of what the actual battle map looks like, but still fits really nicely into the sort of Middle-earth theme. So it no longer looks like the stupid large city from the base game. So that's the largest town, the largest size, the large city. And then we come to the castle and the stronghold. So the Northman castle now looking like a nice little defensible hub. If I can once again get this damn cursor to align where I want it, you have to zoom out and then go further than you think. It's an art that I've not got locked down. But anyway, there we are. There is the castle. Stone gate, stone base around the wall, but wooden walls otherwise, with a keep in the centre at the back. It's very distinguishable from the town, and that fundamentally is the purpose of the strategy models. You should be able to, at a glance, look at that and know that's a castle or that's a stronghold, because that is the point of it. You don't want to be staring at them thinking, oh, is that the largest possible size? No, you want to know straight away, that's a castle, that's a town, and that's a big town, and that's a medium tier castle. And I think these do that wonderfully. And the final tier is the stronghold, the highest possible tier of castle for any nation. Beyond those with custom settlements, looking absolutely amazing. The castle in the centre has been upgraded and now has a tower on the corner. You've got again a double layer of walls with an outer and an inner, 2 gatehouses there protecting those, and everything is stone and defensible. And once again, it really does at a glance tell you that is a very powerful castle that I'm assaulting. You can see straight away the difference between the two, with the stone defences, the double-layered walls versus the wooden defences there. And again, if we do just hover from above, you do have a very clear sense of progression. You know that it's a town because it's got a wall, and then you know that that's a large town because the wall is thicker, but also people have now started living outside, denoting the size. It is large. Then we move over to a city, and we know it's a city because they've taken the step of upgrading the walls to stone, so that gives you the clear view there. And then lastly, you know that one's a large city because it's bloody massive, and it gives itself away almost immediately. These look absolutely fantastic, and again, I am so chuffed. And I am always so grateful that we were able to snap up the Elite Dwarf all those years ago, because he has done nothing but improve Divide and Conquer. The campaign map is where you spend a lot of time, and making this look nice is definitely on a good and a worthwhile goal. So just to pop everything back in, I can show you where we are. I just think they look fantastic. And when you turn all the UI back on again, nothing is obscured. It's all very obvious what you're looking at. I think it's excellent. I really do. Now, do note that the Dunadine do also use the town and large town models that the Northmen use, which is this one and this one. And then when you get to the city and large city, the Dunadine swap over and start using their Arnorian / Reunited Kingdom designs, which you've seen before. So I'm not going to go through those. They're just similar to the Gondorian ones, but with grey roofs instead of blue roofs in essence. There are a few minor changes, but they have been shown in a developer diary, and it's nothing new. So I won't show those. So that's all for the campaign map. Now we're going to jump over and take a look at the Ardenheim models, which many of you will have seen the new Ardenheim roster in my Ardenheim playthrough. But if you haven't, I'll show you the new Ardenheim models, because the whole roster's been overhauled, and show you the new Barrowite model as well by a contributor to the mod. So we shall now jump over to the battle map. Welcome then to the battle map and the version 5 visuals for the Ardenheim and the Barrow Whites. So the Ardenheim, this is a mod, in essence, a sub-mod made by Castellan. But Castellan then joined the Divide and Conquer team when Hummingbird and I left, and he brought his Ardenheim models with him. The team voted and said, yep, we'd definitely like to have those as the visuals for the Ardenheim, so here they are. So you may have seen them before because you may already be playing with them, because I believe they are a sub-mod. But we start off, so the Corsairs are unchanged other than the name. So the Corsair Raiders and the Corsair Archers just going back to being called that instead of Azra Zaire. That then means that the Azra Zaire tier is separated off, and there's a clear difference between the two, which is I do agree with. I support wholeheartedly, because these and these don't look anything alike. So the fact that they all shared the same name was always a bit confusing, given that these two are really basically trash. I'm not going to go through any of the stats. These are only just visuals. So those are the Corsair Raiders and the Corsair Archers. But then we come to the Azra Zaire. So starting off, the Warriors, the old Corsair Berserker unit is now the Azra Zaire Warrior. And I think they are very, very cool. So they've got this two-handed axe with a very small little axe head, but a very long pole, which is quite cool. And they have the shield on their arm. Now the shield, some people will moan about the shield. Some people say that it shouldn't be there. But I think the shield on a two-handed weapon, on a two-handed unit, is a good idea, because it hasn't happened in the mod before, and variety really is the spice of life. So putting up with the minor clipping that you get, I think this is a really good idea. They've then got little feathers on their hats, and a leather armor theme going throughout. They are then supported by, well, we'll start with the crossbows first, the Azra Zaire crossbows. So again, identical armor, they just then use crossbows. So you've got a very clear distinction between your first proper mainstream units of the warriors and the crossbowmen. And then they're supported, as I say, by the Marines. Now the Marines have their own visual, and they have a much better looking feather, a pheasant feather. And they're still javelin throwers, and then they're fairly good sword combatants thereafter. But they do have their own visual look, as you can see, where they're far more heavily upgraded than the other two Azra Zaire. But looking very cool, and taking on the red and black theme runs very much throughout this roster, as you can see. Then we come to your actual dedicated mainline. These units will form the bulk of your army for much of the campaign, I can assure you of that. They are the Rosadan Bowmen, the Rosadan Halberdiers, and the Rosadan Footmen. So we'll start with the Footmen. They, as you can see, have a sort of cloth/leathery-like armor, and again, looking very different to those before them, but still close enough that you can tell they're linked, and and in the same army, which I do like. The shield is an absolute masterpiece, a demon of a shield, a behemoth of a shield, if you will. An absolute monster that they wield into battle, and then spear and shield to go with. The Rosadan halberdiers are just that, halberdiers. Same visuals again, but they have a halberd, and there it is in all its glory, with the axe head and then the long blade. They've got the sort of Gondorian-themed feather helmets, because remember, the Ardenaeum believe themselves to be the true sons of Numenor, and the Gondorians believe themselves to be the true sons of Numenor. They can't both be, but they can both take on the iconography of Numenor, which is very much water-based birds. Because Numenor, of course, is an island and famous for its sailing, water-based birds take on a great deal of meaning. And the swan often is held as the ultimate of this. Obviously, Dol Amroth has the swan as a theme throughout, but the swan-winged helmets are very common in Gondor, and therefore also the Ardenaeum wear them. So these are the bowmen, exactly the same look again, but they have a bow. So you can see there's a slight differentiation between the two. Some people have a sort of a dark browny reddy kind of cloth, and others just have a pure red. But their quivers are on their waists, which is, I think, pretty cool. And actually fairly common in modern times, isn't it? The back is really not favoured as a quiver location anymore. But those are the Rosadan, they're your main line. Now, the units that will actually start doing things for you are the Abrazanim. So we've got the Nardubawib to start. These are the archers. So the Abrazanim are your post-barracks event elites. But remember, the barracks event has gone. So they are now just your mainstream elites, if you will. Which I need a better name for them, really. These are sort of your early tier mainstream, and these are your late tier mainstream. And what I mean by that is they're always available everywhere. That's the purpose of the mainstream phrasing. And the Abrazanim and Nardubawib are no exception to that. They are available everywhere. They're excellent archers, and their armor looks fantastic. Really, really good quality. They really do look like archers, which I think is really good. There's a lot of maneuverability amongst them, but they've still got enough defense that if the enemy comes a knock-in, they won't go down without a fight. They've got a shield on their waist, but remember, a shield on the waist does not equate to a shield defense point. It's a pure visual effect. They've still got the sashes as well that are common throughout the units before, indicating again that uniformity throughout. You are playing as a professional army when you play as the Ardenaeum, and that shows in their units, and I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Then we come to the Nardu Tariq. The Nardu Tariq are the mace and shield. These guys are badass. They get a lot of kills because they're armor piercing, and they look fantastic. So the shield that we saw before, a large corner of it has been cut out, as is common in often in battle, as I understand it, because you can rest whatever you want in that little curve and cut out. The shield quality is really high. I really like the design of the shield. I think it's very nice. But again, same visual as the Nardubawib, really, but just with a mace and a shield. And you can take a look at that there. And then lastly, we've got the Narduzagar, who are the two-handed sword variants. Now, these, again, have a controversial shield that lots of people either love or hate, seemingly. It's the Marmite shield. And that is that they've got a shield on their upper arm. Very much a trophy-style shield, or a pure visual effect that Castellan has used. And personally, I agree with. Because again, variety is the spice of life, and there are no other units in the mod that have that shield. And when you've got 500 units in your mod, you've got to do something to make them look different, and I think that's really good. They've also got a really nice looking sword. No frills, no thrills, just a weapon of mass destruction, and they look absolutely fantastic. I also like this sort of half cloth effect that a few of them have, where the cloth only covers one side of their body. As you can see with this fellow here. And I like that. I don't really know why. I can't really tell you for why, but I really like that. So those are the Abrazanim. And then we come to your elites, your actual elites. Now these are very cool indeed. They all have a sort of bespoke look. So we'll start with your actual bodyguard, the Naru and Aru Household Guard. So gold now joins the colour scheme, and I think it works fantastically. These guys look brilliant, absolutely amazing. You'll note that again, very similar armor to what we've already seen before, but with gold trim, which just sets them apart as the best of the best. They're still wearing the sash. They're now fully plated head to toe. The wings on their helmets have taken on a golden edge, which I think looks cool. The shields are gold. It just look fantastic. It's an excellent merging of gold, red and black to create a beautiful looking unit, and I really do think that. So those are the Household Guard. Then we've got the Armsmen. Now the Armsmen are a bit of a bridging of the gap between the Abrazanim and the Elites, and you'll note that in the fact that they don't have any gold on them, but they are more heavily armoured than the Abrazanim. They are full plate head to toe. They are in essence your best swordmen. They are available everywhere, though, I believe, Armsmen. So in many ways, they should be standing just in front of this elite line, because most of these others are AOR, so they're restricted in some way. But the Armsmen, I don't think are. They are just your mainstream elite sword unit. And they reflect that by having no gold, but as I say, full plate armor. They've also got this sort of sash on their shoulder, which I, again, really do like. I think that's very cool, in that this side has the shoulder and this side has the legs covered, and I like that. But they look absolutely badass, and they are monsters of battle as well, so very useful indeed. Right, then we come to the Naru and Naru Royal Guard. These share the same visuals as the Household Guard. The Household Guard and the Royal Guard are basically one and the same, but the Household Guard are this bespoke bodyguard unit, whereas these are just your elite spears. So they have the same visual. So we have already very much seen these in battle. There's just more of them in the line. So we'll move along. We come then to the Ar-Pharazôn's Faithful, your pike elite unit, and one of the best pikes in the game, and an absolute beauty of a unit. You know what they remind me of, actually? They remind me of the armor that I'm sure you won for being Boethiah's champion in Cyrodiil in Oblivion. There's something about this unit that just screams ebony armor to me, and then maybe I had a mod that changed the way that it looked so they look more like that. But this model just really stands out to me as something that would absolutely feel at home fighting under the cause of Boethiah in the Elder Scrolls. But anyway, they are fantastic, and that's something we can probably all agree on. The gold trim in this one really steps up to denote that these really are the best of the best, or more importantly, these are the noblest of all of your forces. This fellow very kindly showing us what it looks like without his arm across his waist. They've got the two circular discs in the corners, which is an armor style I've only ever seen in The Witcher, actually. The Witcher game series, the forces of Nilfgaard have those circular plates up on the corners. I've never seen that in an actual armor that I've seen, but I've not seen much medieval armor. I'm not a student of medieval history. The pike's looking pretty good as well. I do like that, and I can show you them from behind. I'm doing what I can to not move the camera around, because obviously the best way to look at them is just for me to stop moving and you to look at them. So that's why I'm just trying to talk over still images, really. But a fantastic looking unit, even if it is still as rare as it was before. And then we come to Beruthiel's Watch. Now, Beruthiel's Watch are your ranger-style unit, but they have a crossbow, which is very controversial, and they might be changed back to bows in our lifetime, because a lot of people disagree with them having crossbows. They can hide anywhere, so they're ambush specialists. They have, again, the pheasant feather, and they do have some gold trim on their armour. But again, they're more similar to the Armsmen in tier, really. They are restricted in how you can train them, but not massively. I believe they are forests and coastlands, so they're available in quite a lot of places. But they are still your elite. So you have to rely on them if you can get them. They're very good, but obviously crossbows take such a long time to shoot that sometimes they don't get a chance to shine. But they look fantastic. And if I unpause the battle for you and just move them forward so that they all stand up, you can actually see a little bit of what they look like. So keeping the fact that they're ranger theme going, which I like a lot, they are heavily armoured, but not to a degree that you'd think, oh, this person can't move around on the battlefield at all. But still, many of you will still think it controversial that they're a ranger unit that can hide anywhere, because they don't really have the aesthetic of a normal ranger style unit. So maybe they'll change in the future, who knows, but I think they look cool, and I would keep them personally. And lastly, we come to the Naru and Naru Royal Knights. Now, the thing that sells these to me, and I just think is quite possibly one of the best additions to the game in a long time, as I'm sure you will all know, is the horse. The barding on this horse is fantastic. The armor and the sort of underlayer, the cloak, if you will. I don't know what it is called, a barding, isn't it? Or is it called a bardiche, maybe? I can't remember. But anyway, the horse looks absolutely amazing and makes this unit really stand out. And I'm really chuffed that Castellan took the time to work on a horse model to match them. Because for the unit on top, of course, again, it's a unit you've already seen. They look exactly like the Naru and Naru Royal Guard and Household Guard. So their visual, the armour of the gentleman, you've seen before down this line already. But it's the horse that really makes them stand out. And the horse matches the armour so well. It is such an excellent horse model, and I really hope it's used somewhere else in the mod, because it seems a shame to waste that on a single unit. And not only a single unit, but one that you really don't get access very easily to. They're really rare. We're 100 and something turns into my Ardenaim campaign, and I still am unable to train these yet because they have such a high culture requirement. We're closing in on it, but we haven't got it yet. And I've chosen a fairly close starting point. I chose Minas Tirith as my starting region. So or Osgiliath actually. So we can get them soon, but they take a long time to come, and it seems a shame to waste such an excellent horse model on only one unit. But I don't know where else you'd use it, and you'd have to recolor it to use it somewhere else. And lastly, I mentioned it at the start of today's episode, but the Trebuchet has come to the Ardenaim, and the Trebuchet comes with the Ardenaim version of the Gondorian armour. So you'll note it's got the Ardenaim insignia in the chest rather than the Gondorian one, but in all other ways it matches the Gondorian armour, because that's how battle models are shared in Medieval 2. One unit can be shared amongst 5 factions, and you can change the colour and the textures of the unit, but you can't change the model. So in order to share the Trebuchet amongst the Dunadine, Gondor, Dol Amroth and the Ardenaim, this model, the gentleman standing in front of you, must remain the same. Only the textures and the colours upon him can change. And that's what's been utilised here. So he has the Gondorian, the Ardenaim version of the Gondorian armour. And that's how it fits into the mod. Interestingly though, he has a very old style banner, considering the rest of the banners have been updated to match the new armour style, and have been updated just in general. They're their own unique banner in that they have this sort of Roman style banner rather than the elven waving thin banner that we see an awful lot in Lord of the Rings. This type of banner. But again, because the banner carrier's model is fixed, that's why it has to look like this, now that I've said that out loud. Because even if you might think this is not part of the model, it absolutely is. The weapon that he uses is locked to him. So he has to share the same visual. But that is the Ardenaim roster. And then finally, I am to show you the new Barrowite model created by R3AP3R. I'm sure he probably wants me to call him Reaper, but if he'd wanted me to call him Reaper, then why not write your name as Reaper? But anyway, he's created this fantastic Barrowite model and allowed Dak to use it, and it looks brilliant. It really does. It separates them excellently from the Nazgul by making them not just look like cut purse Nazgul, basically, or cut price Nazgul, sorry. And I do like as well that they've got a sort of battered and weathered look to them. There are holes in the helmets that you can see through, and for once they're not a mistake, they're intended, which is nice. And it just gives them that kind of decrepit and aged look. You'll also note, if we unpause again, that even though they are walking, they don't actually have any feet. Which is rather unsettling, and I think a nice little addition. He didn't have to go through that trouble, but he has done, and I think it works wonders. Obviously, they do have to have legs, because they're rigged to a skeleton model that will have legs, so they have to have legs. But he hasn't shown any actual sort of corporeal form underneath the cloak, and I think that's really cool. And it makes the Barrowites really stand out. That is an absolutely amazing model. I really like that. I haven't seen it yet. This is the first time I'm looking at it as well. I've seen a screenshot, but not seen it in-game. And in-game, it just looks brilliant, doesn't it? That looks absolutely amazing. And the armour style on the pauldrons matches Arnold just enough that you can tell this is a 3,000-year-old dead person who's wearing the armour that was worn when they were alive. And it says it shares some similarities to the Gondor and Arnor of today, but is very distinctly not their armour. And I like that a lot. That's really good attention to detail. So an absolutely fantastic-looking model. Now, as I say, that will then conclude, not as I say, I don't know why I've said that. But anyway, that concludes today's developer diary. But as mentioned earlier, there are a lot of changes to Dunland I could have added in today, but I think it is better to give Dunland their own video dedicated to them, because Dunland is being overhauled, so to squeeze them in with the developer diary just seems wrong. But that is all the work that's gone on to the mod to date. Version 5 is on the horizon, but again, absolutely no idea when it will be. But certain features of the mod have been moved to a later version to ensure that version 5 comes out in a timely manner, and we'll get it at some point. If you have any questions or comments, please do post them here. But of course, remember that the Discord channel linked in the description below is Dak's official home, and there is an official suggestions page which opens each weekend for 24 hours, and you can post suggestions if you wish. You cannot post any suggestions related to new units or new factions, because neither of those things are possible. We've reached the limit. But you can suggest anything else that you want. So if there's anything about this that you think you want to suggest or you want to comment on, you can post it here on YouTube, but it might not make it back to the Dak team because I'm no longer part of the Dak team. So instead, do be sure to log on to the Discord and post your suggestions when the suggestions hall opens. But until we speak again, dear friends, do have a wonderful week. I hope to see you all in the live stream tomorrow at 11:30. But until then, Navar Neden Petamad Melonin, and farewell.